Hey, thank you guys. Thank you, Nicole, and Connecting for Kids for having me. I may stand over this way because I don't know that I can see too far over that. So, as you said, I'm Jen Knott. I did start Rec to Connect, so we provide recreation therapy and aquatic therapy to individuals with special needs. We work out of the Gemini Center in Fairview Park, and then we're also at the Mandel JCC in Beechwood. So we have an east and a west location. Aquatics programs, we provide one-on-one aquatic therapy. We do adapted aquatics. We have a swim team that we run. We do mom and me classes. And then our group programming, we work with individuals ages 2 and up on land. So we do a lot of practicing of play and thank you. We do a lot of practicing of play in a structured environment. So I know there's a lot of other places that you can go for play where kids can interact with each other, and you can kind of help them with those interactions. Most of our groups are run by recreation therapists. They're run also by other volunteers, and we work in a very structured way so that we can kind of address any needs of every individual that's in the class. Also, so it's predictable so that kids know what to expect next in play and in our programs. And we started this in 2009. So we've been going out of both facilities since then. Then we also have a foundation called the Rec to Connect Foundation. All this information is back on the tables too, so if you guys are looking for more information about it, it's back there. Our foundation provides scholarships for any recreation programs in the area. So not just our programs, but if you wanted to do swim lessons somewhere else, or if you wanted to do taekwondo lessons or dance class or something like that, we provide scholarships twice a year. We have an application that you can find online at rectoconnectfoundation.org. We usually try to give everybody something. We may not be able to fund, the full cost of the program, but we do try to help in some way, shape, or form. We also do free family events, or very low-cost family events. Recreation is definitely, obviously, a huge part of what we do at Rec to Connect, and very important, I think, in family dynamic and in growth and building connections. And I know sometimes that can be the last thing that parents are thinking of as they're kind of planning their weeks and their days, and everything kind of runs together. So we try to provide a variety of activities, usually once a month, that families can participate in together. They also can meet other families that may be going through different or similar situations that they're going through. We've done pool parties in the past. We've done Indians games. We are doing Cleveland State games. So kind of giving families the opportunity to get out in the community and see what is out there, see if it works before you would commit to spending money to go to an Indians game and not know if that might work for your child or not. And then our third part that we do with the foundation, we also do try-it classes. So we partner with other recreation facilities in the area and kind of showcase their programming so that people can kind of come out and try out what they have and see if, again, it's something that they like. You don't have to commit to a 12-week session and then find out 2 weeks in that this is not for my child, or this is not going to work, or the organization is not quite what I thought. So we want to just give families the opportunity to get out there and kind of see what else is out there. So that's a little bit more about Rec to Connect. As Nicole said before, I'm a recreation therapist, so we do assist individuals in how to play. I think the biggest thing that we do is we use play and recreation as our mode of teaching. So we do work on a lot of different skills that maybe a physical therapist would, or an occupational therapist or speech therapist would, but we do it all through play. So it's just kind of a little difference between the two. So I'll kind of get into our presentation. Positive play with preschoolers. Another side note too, I also have a 4 and a 5-year-old. So I'm also a mom, so I feel like as I was putting together this presentation, a lot of these things were hitting home with me as a mom. Even though I'm a therapist and I do this every day, it's not easy. It's a lot to be a parent, and it's not always easy, even though I know what to do, I have all the tools in my pocket, I know what I should be doing, but in the moment sometimes it's not that easy as a parent to stop and think and take a breath and be able to kind of help instead of react to what's going on with your child at that time. So I think just starting out with saying, these are all tips and tools and tricks, but again, nobody's perfect. Nobody's doing it, 100% of the time, but if you take something from it and can use it in the future, that's definitely the goal for today. So this kind of goes into why do toddlers need to play. I think we all know that every toddler and preschooler is learning through play. Anything that they're doing is, even if it's taking containers out of a drawer 500 times over and over again, and you're behind them picking them up every single time, they're learning something every time that they're doing that. And that's their form of play, let's say at age 1. Age 2, they may still be doing that as well. Age 3, maybe they're starting to stack them, making pyramids out of them, running into them, knocking them down. Things that we see as maybe messes that they're making all over the place are typically things that they're doing to kind of explore their environment and learn. They learn through these kind of situations a lot of social norms, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, how to act around other children, what is best practice in those areas. So as much as sometimes we want to kind of redirect those different things where they may not be doing what we want them to do, a lot of times that is their way of kind of learning about life through play. They're also working out realistic situations through play. So they're, pretend play with cars. They're doing pretend play with a variety of objects, dolls. My son loves driving cars around, and he thinks he's McQueen and racing everybody else. And then I see him on the playground with other kids, and he's challenging other kids to do the same thing. So he's, taking what he's doing at home and then trying to put that in a real life situation out in the community. That doesn't always end the best, but it's, he's got a plan in his mind that he's trying to carry out. It also helps build relationships and promote connections, not only between other children, but also between the parent and the child. So a lot of what we're teaching them at home is kind of those starting foundations of what they're going to take play to out in the community and out with other kids as well. So getting on the floor with them and playing, that's building memories for them as they go forward as well. It's early learning of academic skills, your counting, your stacking, your learning opposites, all of that included. They're developing motor planning skills, so learning how to cross midline with their hands, learning how to use their hands one at a time, using how to use them cooperatively, to play with something together. All of those skills are things that they will carry with them into their teens, into their adulthood, if they're going to play sports later on. And kind of starting at this very young age is where you start seeing those skills develop. Increasing of physical strength, obviously, so anything that they're doing that's running and crashing and handstands and rolls and all that is building their physical strength again for the future. Increasing independence and self-confidence. The more that they try different things and realize that they can do things on their own, it's building their sense of self and their ability to take that as well in the community, on the playground, in school as they start going into kindergarten or preschool. They also use it, it's crucial for social, emotional, physical, and cognitive growth. Again, all of those areas that we're working on through play, if it's counting, if it's touching different items, if it's identifying, if it's verbally expressing different things, if it's teaching sign language, all of those things can be a part of play, which again, carry over. And children typically are playing around 5 to 6 hours a day. Even though it may not look like it, like I said, as they're taking all of your stuff out and making piles all over your house, that's their way of playing, their way of kind of getting to learn what's going on around them. Going through just the developmental stages of play, typically most kids when they first start at a young age, they're not focused on a goal-oriented task. So if our idea when we bring out blocks is that we're going to build a tower and it's maybe going to be color-coded and we're going to do all these things, like most kids are either thinking about throwing them at the wall or seeing how far they can throw them or seeing how squishy they are, what they can put in their mouth. So a lot of times their play does not look like what our play does at this stage. They enjoy exploring, learning from their experiences, problem solving. A lot of skills build upon each other. So where they're starting at let's say age 2, where they're in solitary play, is going to then build on for their level at age 3 as well. At age 2, they're typically playing alone. They're playing maybe next to another child, but they're not playing with them. They're starting to work on problem solving with cause and effect toys. Maybe they're doing something with lights and sound, and they're pushing buttons and figuring out what all of that can do for them. Again, the drawers, clearly that was something that went on in my house a lot, was taking everything out of our drawers. And they like to explore. They just kind of like to gain their independence. A lot of them are starting to become more mobile. They're starting to become more safe. Next age, kind of 2 years and on, is a spectator and onlooker behavior where they're watching what other kids are doing, maybe kind of glancing at them every once in a while, but they're not trying to interact yet. They're not at that stage where they're ready to go over and maybe ask to do something. You may see it intermittently once in a while, but it's not something that at that age you're seeing a ton of. Parallel play, usually 2 and up, where they start, again, playing next to each other. Maybe they both have cars and they're both doing their own things with cars, but they're not playing with them together. They might crash into each other once in a while and kind of, I don't know what's going on, and then go the other way. 3 to 4 years old, they're coming with associative play, so they are starting to play together, but they're not focused on the same goal. So they might be playing in a kitchen together with play food, and they're all kind of cooking their own thing. Maybe they're sharing toys intermittently, but they're not working together to like, let's build a menu together, and let's do this, and we're going to go serve our friends over here. 3 years old and 4 years old, they're usually not quite at that stage yet. And then cooperative play is the last one, where they are starting, it's more organized, they're starting to work on teamwork, they can kind of have roles within their play, they're telling maybe other kids what to do, maybe there's other kids who are a little more passive in the situation. You can kind of see that dynamic starting to form as they reach that 4-year-old stage. Throughout all of this play as well, I think when you see a lot in this age of the spectator and the onlooker play for a longer period of time at times, is because kids can be very unpredictable. When we're playing with them, I think they know what to expect from us as parents. They know that we're not going to take a toy and chuck it at them at some point in time. Where with other kids, that might happen. And not to say that the other kid is trying to hurt somebody, but that just, they're exploring, they're playing, they're seeing what happens. And so I think playing with adults is safe for a lot of kids. So you might find that they're tending to latch onto you and want to be closer to you when they're in social situations, because other kids can be intimidating, and not knowing what they might be able to do or what they could do or how do they interact with them can be very overwhelming at times. This just kind of goes through a brief list of developmental milestones at those ages, just kind of what you can expect at age 2, 3, and 4. Definitely not a cumulative list whatsoever. There's a lot of them out there that you can check out. A lot that come from the pediatrician's office too, as you're going in for your checkups. They're kind of asking these questions. But this kind of is more in relation to play, what you're seeing. So starting at age 2, they're doing a lot of sorting and matching and counting, puzzles, blocks. They're doing jumping. They're starting to ride a trike, possibly. They're getting easily frustrated when it comes to their emotions. They're kind of all over the place as they're learning their world. Rapid mood changes. They could be singing a song 1 second, and the next minute they're on the floor rolling around and throwing things and crying. They're singing songs. They're using pronouns. They're starting with that parallel play again. 3 years old, they're starting to understand opposites, kind of starting to express feelings using words or sign. They're starting to thread, use scissors. They're pouring different objects from one to the next. Starting to stand on one foot, walking on tiptoes. Climbing stairs reciprocally, meaning they're using 1 foot at a time to go up the steps instead of stepping on one step and bringing the other foot to join them. They're starting to test limits. They're more aware of their surroundings and others. Conversation skills, they have pretend play. They're interested, starting with playing with others. And then 4 years old, they're starting to stop and start running with ease without falling, not crashing into things quite as much. They're climbing on playground equipment. They're taking those skills from 2 and 3 and kind of administering them out in the community a lot more, starting at age 4. Letter identification, they're starting to ask a lot of why questions all day usually. There's quick mood swings with this as well. I feel like within my 5-year-old, almost 6-year-old, we still see that with her. There's cooperative play, starting with peers. They have a hard time waiting their turn, understanding object permanence, understanding that if something goes away to another child, that it's going to come back to them eventually. That's a tough concept at that age. They're starting to develop some friendships, but it doesn't quite look like what it will when they get into the kindergarten, first grade years. Activities to develop gross motor skills. So I kind of went through and divided up different developmental levels of play, and then just some ideas to use at home to kind of start building those skills before going out in the community, or if you have kids over for a play date, fun things that you might just have around the house that you'd be able to utilize quickly as well. 2 years old, just sitting on the floor and playing catch with a ball back and forth, just rolling it, even if you have a group of kids, being able to do that. A lot of times they're maybe not saying other kids' names by that point to gain their attention, so even if they're pointing to the other child to acknowledge that they're about to throw to them is something you can work on. Taking the cushions off the couch and just piling them up in the middle of the floor and letting them jump around and play and build things, rolling around on them. Using the Tupperware blocks again to build large towers, knocking them down. You know, when kids liked running into them, kicking them over, they would like riding a tricycle into them. It would kind of motivate them to ride a tricycle because they had to move to actually get to something they wanted to do. Climbing through tunnels, placing items through an empty paper towel roll, watching them come down. Again, a lot of that cause-effect play is what you're looking at age 2. Pushing chairs in a line, setting up trains, and everybody pretends that they're on a train, and bringing items from every part of your house to the train. 3 years old, they're starting to do, again, as we mentioned, like a lot more of that movement play. So they're doing standing on one foot and tiptoeing, so running and jumping, using streamers, using scarves, using a lot of props at that age. Dressing up, kids love pretend play around the age of 2 and 3 as well. Placing painter's tape on the floor and walking like a balance beam. If you don't have a balance beam, that's something you could always use and easily clean up with that one. Draping blankets over top of chairs and creating tunnels to go over and under and weaving things around. We've also used yarn throughout our house, like if you have just an old spool of yarn that you're not going to be using, letting them wrap it around your house in some different way, shape, or form, and then crawling over and around and through. Definitely makes things challenging to get around in as a parent, but it's easy to cut and bring down whenever you're ready to. Using resistance bands to sit across from each other, singing Row, Row, Row Your Boat. Kids learn so much through music and through rhythm and rhyme, especially at that kind of 2, 3, 4 age, that anything that you're trying to have them do, incorporating song into it, can make something that's completely undesirable something that they absolutely want to do all of a sudden. It makes it fun and engaging and different. Age 4, hammering golf tees into foam blocks, setting up an obstacle course with jumping, rolling, crawling. Red light, green light is another one. Throwing balls into baskets. You can have the kids hold the baskets, and that kind of starts that interactive play as well. So if you have multiple children, either siblings within the house, or you have a play date, having one of them hold the basket, the other one throws it in, and then vice versa, they do the same. So they're starting to work on sharing and turn-taking, cooperation. Hitting the balloon back and forth with a bat or just with your hands, keeping it off the ground, kicking a plastic bag to a goal. Kids like that one, it makes a lot of noise. Sometimes it sticks on your foot and feels kind of funny. Laying on a scooter and pulling with a rope. You can also have them work on reciprocal motion, pulling hand over hand with those. Wheeler walking and Mother May I are another kind of list of different ideas to kind of help with that. I feel like anything that you can take away when you see a presenter, it's always nice to go home with tools that you can use at home the next day. So that's kind of where I put all this together. Next one is activities for social skills, to start developing different ways to communicate based on where they're at developmentally. So being at age 2 or 3, 2 years old, hiding items from them. It's going to give you an opportunity to teach them in the moment as well. Placing items out of reach, so they have to request them or ask for them if they're, in a cup and the lid is super tight on the cup and they can't get it off. They're going to have to ask you for help in some way, shape, or form. If that's signing help, if that's handing you a picture of somebody helping someone else, if it is actually saying the word help, or maybe they're getting out the sound H at that time, just to even get some form of back and forth communication. You kind of want to create that need for communication when you're working with any of the preschool ages, 2, 3, and 4. Pretending to go on a trip to a different room of the house and having them pack their bags like they're actually going. Starting to talk about those different social situations and asking what they need and seeing if they have ideas of what they should pack. If you're going, to just go to lunch, what should we pack for lunch? Are we going to go get socks, or are we going to go get, something out of the cupboard for that? So it's starting to teach them a lot of different skills, as simple as they may be. Again, using songs, head, shoulders, knees, and toes, starting to identify body parts. Itsy Bitsy Spider is another great one. They're working on cooperative motion with their hands, You can work on signing in that one as well when they're doing wash it out. That's a sign for all done as well. So you can kind of transfer that to other areas. Within 3 years old, chasing, playing tag. Kids at this age usually like a lot of movement and a lot of activity. So putting them on a blanket and moving them around the house, having them lay on the blanket and you pull them as they're going, but working on starting and stopping. So they're having to request that they want more, or saying stop and go. Red light, green light is another good one for that as well, where they can maybe be the person holding up the signs for red light, green light, and then you're playing with them, and then switch to where they're having the opportunity to play different roles as well at this age. Interacting with other kids. There was one up there about where are you game, where you have other kids maybe hiding behind a curtain or behind a rug or somewhere where you're asking where did so-and-so go. And the kids are looking around the house saying, where are you, and then they pop out and then everybody says hello. So you're starting to practice those greeting skills as well. These things seem like very basic, simple things to do, but they're building those opportunities as they go out in the community to start practicing them. And I think the more repetition that you can give your kids in a controlled environment with you or with other caretakers that may be around you, the more successful they're going to be out in the community when they maybe don't have you right there or they're trying these things out on their own as well. With age 4, placing a bunch of piles of shoes in the middle, so we're starting to work on that cooperation and like teamwork part where we're all going to put our shoes in the middle and then we're going to jump over the big pile. Or we're going to line them up in a row and we're going to work on jumping over the line and then finding all of those at the end to where maybe somebody else took your shoes, and then you have to work through that social situation of how do I get my shoes back and how do we talk this out in a positive way. Definitely want to start working on teamwork, reciprocal exchanges within verbal communication. And again, as we talked about with the gross motor part, these skills all build upon each other. So the things that you're teaching them at 2 is going to build what they're gaining at 3 and what they're gaining at 4 and so on. Next one is going to be activities to develop emotional skills. Obviously, we're trying to teach them how to regulate their emotions, and emotions are very, very big at these ages. They're very overwhelming to 2, 3, and 4-year-olds. Everything they feel is magnified by a million. So it comes out like that as well. So again, finding ways that you can practice that with them at home and setting them up for success when they do go out to do this in the future. 2 years old, singing If You're Happy and You Know It, and being very expressive and over the top with, what happy looks like, what if you're incorporating sad into that, if you're incorporating angry into that, letting them know the differences between those two, making it obvious. Encouraging the children to comfort each other if they're in distress, if they see another child in the community that might be upset, pointing that out to them and saying, well, look, so-and-so is upset over there. Maybe we should go see if they're okay, or ask if everything is all right with them, or could we bring them a Band-Aid or something to help and kind of tune them into what's going on around them. 3 years old, using puppets, felt people, dolls to work out those emotional, social situations. If it's boys, there's a million types of cars, monster trucks, trains that can work those social things out by crashing into each other, and somebody fell down, another hurt. Making faces of the different emotions in the mirror, so just practicing what does it look like when you're happy, what does it look like when you're sad, what does it look like when you're angry, what does mommy look like during those times, or dad look like during those times. So you can have them start identifying those different things on others as well. Putting faces on rocks and putting them all together, filling a balloon with sand and squeezing them, writing their different emotion faces on them, and you squeeze them and they make another emotional face. 4 years old, making a family tree, so starting to teach them, a feeling of a sense of self outside of themselves, of who's involved. Hide and go seek, making eye contact when you find them or when they find you. Using if-then emotion games, if this happens, then how would I feel? Or if this happened, if I dropped this down, what would happen from there? Like I said, this can definitely be one of the most challenging parts, I think, for our kids to go through, and I think it's challenging as a parent to help them navigate through the emotional feelings that they're feeling in the moment, because they don't stop at any time. This could be in the store, this could be at the library, this could be at home. It could happen anywhere, anytime, any place. And I think the more that we are prepared to help them through those things and kind of ourselves stop and take a breath and have the tools and techniques to work through those things, the more successful we can help them be as well. Another part of this is kind of in a situation where your child might be having a challenge when it comes to play. I think it helps to kind of look at all reasons why things could be happening. There's a lot of different reasons, and some of them probably don't make sense to us at times. But kind of going through the gamut of all of it so that we can know how to appropriately help them. So addressing kind of sensory needs within that. Sometimes a situation they walk into might be too overwhelming. It may be too loud. There could be kids running around everywhere with a million different toys, and just even the thought of walking into that is too much for our kids. Realizing too that everybody processes sensory information differently, so everything coming in doesn't go in the same way to all of us, and the same is for our kids as well. If it's sound, if it's smell, if it's touch, if it's lighting, all of those things can be interpreted through the brain and then also through our bodies in a different way. The most well-known ones are the ones that I just listed, but there's also proprioceptive input to always kind of be aware of as well. That's a sense of where your body is in space, kind of knowing, am I going to run into this? How far back do I need to be? Where do I need to navigate to get around these types of things? Again, with other kids running around and kind of the chaos that ensues when children are playing on a playground or things like that, if someone's having trouble with proprioceptive input, that can be extremely overwhelming for them. Vestibular input, the sense of movement and balance, that comes from within your inner ear. So recognizing, if I'm moving, am I going to fall over? Where is, again, kind of where my body is? Where am I going? Where do I want to go with my body? And then being able to execute those motions as well. Some kids are understimulated and overstimulated. You'll see kids who love crashing into things and are really wanting that strong, heavy, hard input. So they may be understimulated in an environment that you may take them in. They may be needing a little bit more input during those times. Maybe a hug or a squeeze, or there's different weighted materials that are out there. There's different fidgets too that are out there that, the fidget spinner is the biggest one, but I've seen at Target they have like a whole wall now of all sensory related items. If it's the squishy ones, if it's textured ones, and all kids kind of like different things. So it was nice to see when I went to Target the last time that I didn't have to go online to order, a whole gamut of things that might help different kiddos, but that they had it very close by, which was great. Being overstimulated, that kind of goes to what we were talking about. If it's too loud, if it's too much, you may see kids covering their ears or retreating from a situation because it's overwhelming, just the sight, the sound, the smells, the everything. And then just working to adjust the environment and activities based on the needs of your kiddos. So if you find that your kiddos are having trouble with some of these different sensory inputs, finding ways that are going to help them through those situations. Next has kind of how to help through sensory adaptations. Monitoring the noise level in the environment. Obviously you can't control children being loud and playing and screaming and all of that, but you may choose a different atmosphere for them for play. Maybe instead of going to an indoor gym or Chick-fil-A where there's a ton of kids running around, it's a closed environment, things are super loud. Maybe come to the library where there's more space. Quiet is definitely part of the expectation at times here. So that might be a place where they may be more successful. Following a routine that's predictable. I know in play that's hard to manage because play is so unpredictable, especially when it comes to other children. But trying to find a way that you can set them up for success to know what's going to happen. So if you know you're coming to the library and this is what the library looks like, maybe showing them a picture before you come so they know what to expect. Or if it is Chick-fil-A, showing them a picture of a ton of kids running around. There's so many videos, I feel like, online now that you could access anything you wanted to be able to kind of prep your kids for an environment that they may be going into that's not maybe a desired one or something that they may not know what to expect when they get there. Using minimal language, I think especially when kids are overwhelmed and too much is going on, I think sometimes as parents we tend to give them more information to try to calm them down and try to help them rationalize what they're feeling and what they're going through at the time. And a lot of times they kind of give you that blank stare, like I'm not quite understanding what you're saying at that time. And I think with all the information that's coming in, if they're overwhelmed from a sensory standpoint, providing them even more sensory input with verbal language can be that much more overwhelming. So kind of taking it down, finding very simple, clear things that you can say to help them. If it's take a deep breath, or even just take a breath. Adding extra words may be too much. I know, like I said, even for myself as a parent, I feel like I try to rationalize with my kids all the time when they're, especially in a heightened state of emotion, and I can just tell in their face, like, this isn't going well. Like, they're not understanding, they're not calming down. This is just making it worse a lot of times. But I think as parents, it's kind of like our initial go-to, and even myself knowing what I should do and having the tools and techniques. That's not always second nature all the time. Offering choices for kids. A lot of kids like being in control in the situation, especially when it comes to play. So if you know that about your child, maybe giving them the opportunity to have a choice in the matter, a controlled choice, that you're not giving them something outrageous that you know either you can't provide or something that can't be provided within the situation, but maybe just asking them, do you want the red or green ball? And even something as simple as that can give them that sense of accomplishment and feeling that, okay, I can do this. I can go into this situation now because I made this choice to do this, instead of somebody telling me what to do and forcing me through this. Kids are being told what to do all the time. I feel like I'm forever saying what they should and shouldn't be doing. And so giving them the opportunity to not feel like that as much as possible can be helpful within reason, obviously. Frequent breaks is another one, especially if a kid is sensory, is overwhelmed with sensory input. Allowing them to take a break, maybe taking them out of the situation for a little bit and then trying to come back for a certain amount of time. Incorporate or limiting tactile input. That's when I was talking about the different target toys that they have now. Add or limit gross motor stations or heavy input if you realize that might be something that's challenging for them and kind of setting them off in that sensory feel. Incorporating calming activities and then organizing the play area. Sometimes if things are a little too chaotic and out of control, it's way too overwhelming for kids to even step into and be successful in that environment. Another part of this is just kind of analyzing behaviors, figuring out what's going on with your child and why. I think that can be helpful at times in figuring out how we can respond the best to what's going on with our kiddos. So figuring out what would be necessary to help them in that moment. Is it that they are seeking more sensory input? If so, how can I provide that for them? Is it that they're seeking my attention? If they are seeking my attention, how can I provide that? Within reason. Maybe you have other children, and so your attention has to be divided at times. But maybe sometimes bringing that other child in to help with what you're doing with the other child can be more successful for them than asking them to go wait while you do something, and then behaviors kind of arise from there. Is it because they want something or something was taken away from them? If that's the case, kind of figuring out how can we prompt communication to encourage them to want to ask for whatever it is that they want instead of hitting or throwing themselves on the ground and having a tantrum. Giving them those tools and figuring out why, I think kind of helps you figuring out what to do next. This just kind of goes through different challenging behaviors in play. We want to try to prevent the problems before they actually arise. So if you know there's certain situations that kind of trigger your child, figuring out how to set them up for success before you even go into it. Maybe you need to create a social story for them so that they know what to expect when they're going into Target and they're expected to wait in line, or they cannot get every toy that's there. Or you're going into a play group and you know that there's going to be a lot of other children and they all are going to be doing a focused activity together, and that might be challenging. Setting them up to know what their expectation would be and what's expected of them in those moments. You want to make learning fun through play, so finding those ways, like I said, if you're doing the cleanup song with them when it's time to clean up. Cleaning up is not fun for anybody, but you throw a song into it and all of a sudden everybody wants to participate, and then you have the group doing what you're asking them to do. Visual supports are another helpful. I have a couple back there that have just like a basic first then board. So if you're asking a child to do something within a play situation and you need them to share a toy first, before they can play with it on their own, maybe having pictures that demonstrate that, and you go over that before you actually go into the situation with them. My daughter right now is in kindergarten, and one thing I've seen her teacher do a lot, especially to get a group of kids to pay attention together, is she'll say things like 1, 2, 3, eyes on me, and then the whole class knows that's what's expected at that time. Or she'll say, if you can hear me and you know it, clap your hands, to the tune of happy and you know it. And then everybody's doing it and everybody's paying attention to what's going on. Finding ways that you can get a group of kids or even your child that you know in a moment that maybe they're not listening or they're having a hard time, that maybe that's your thing that you guys do with each other. I had never thought of that until I went into the classroom and saw 20 kids running 500 different ways, and then all of a sudden she said this, and they all were like, oh my, okay, here's where I need to be. I'm like, why am I not doing that at home? That's such a good idea. And that can be helpful too. And just knowing that children learn through the connection, play, meaningful interactions with each other, being able to provide that for them. So the next few go into the different challenges that we tend to see during these ages, kind of what the behavior looks like, and then a couple strategies for how to help them through those situations. So the first one is sharing. Sharing does not come naturally to kids at this age. Typically all kids, the object, I feel like maybe after mom and dad, the next word is mine that we usually hear, because that's kind of what their understanding level is, once I see something and I know it's mine, that is my favorite word that I'm going to use. Maybe no, that one is definitely thrown in there a lot too. But mine, I feel like, is a huge word at any point in time that you hear your kids. Or even if they're not saying it, they're taking it and showing you, this is mine, this is not anybody else's. So kind of expecting that kids are going to be good at sharing at this age is kind of an unrealistic expectation for them. So figuring out ways that you can start prompting them to share in a positive way that may not relate to them sharing their favorite toy in the world with Johnny, because that's a hard situation. That's kind of like 10 steps down the line that you want to start working on that, where maybe you want to start working on some more basic skills with them, like, why don't you take, this piece of paper over to Dad and give it to him? And just that actual act of giving something to somebody else is kind of that start of learning how to share. Another strategy would be giving them a countdown or a timer. So if you know that it's time to share within a minute, and you're going to be rotating toys within a classroom or at home between children, or you're out in the community and kids are sharing, sometimes setting a timer or giving a countdown can be helpful. Creating a sharing box with a variety of toys that two kids can share. So putting it in between them and letting them know the expectation. So you're not springing it on them that, hey, you're going to share your favorite doll with Joey today. Here's a box of things that you both are expected to share, and we're going to work on this, and that's how we're going to play. And talking them through how to go about it. It's not grabbing it out of another kid's hands, but you asking, can I have that, or can I share that, or pointing to it. Whatever form of communication your child's using at that time, working with that level and then building up from there, but trying to prompt some form of communication to start that share back and forth between each other. Teaching them to wait for the child's response. I feel like that's another one that we see a lot when sharing happens, is that you ask for it and then I've already grabbed it before there's any kind of response, there's any kind of talk about it. It's already in my hands and I'm already going the other way. So teaching them that they have to wait for the other child's response. And then sharing and exchanging those things in the moment. So actually practicing that skill of sharing. There's a lot of different, like I said, social stories we use a lot in our group programs. If we find challenges that our kiddos are having, we'll create a story that has pictures and shows expectations. I have 2 books that I put back there as well that have some of those examples in them that you guys can take a look at. They have things that you can print out of them. They were fairly inexpensive on Amazon to purchase as well. But it goes through, you can look up sharing and find a social story right there on sharing. I know there's a lot of different apps too that you can utilize that will create social stories for you. So if you type in social stories into your Apple search, it will come up with a lot that you could even do on your phone that you may not have to print out. You could just show them on your phone as you're going through these situations. Promoting communication. So if a child does take it before they're supposed to, not allowing that to kind of continue. So having them give it back and then ask appropriately. And teaching that in repetition, not necessarily in that exact moment, but maybe at home. You're doing that multiple times over and over again throughout the day with other kids or with siblings or even just with you, so that they're gaining that practice and knowledge. Like I said, giving items to mom and dad, just handing things out. My kids love, I don't know why, but they love vitamins. So they're gummy, so I get it. But they love, in the morning, it's like they're on my legs and they want them immediately. And so we've started doing where they give each other their vitamins. So every other day, one of them gets the vitamins and gives them to the other person. And so they're practicing sharing, but it's also kind of allowing me to go about my morning as well and get lunches ready and get book bags ready and get everything together. But it gives them a job. It gives them a sense of I'm doing something, I'm helping, I'm a part of this. Discussing, sharing if you're going to go play and you're going to go to another child's house. My son loves Paw Patrol, so I tried to tell him, hey, if you don't want to share Rocky, you should not bring Rocky to the play date today. You should pick maybe Rubble that you're not a huge fan of, because it's hard for him to share his favorite one. So kind of setting him up for success in those areas too, having them bring, if they're bringing something to another house, maybe it's not the best idea to bring like their prized possession. It might be good to bring, their third choice or their seventh choice or something different. And then practice games that require turn taking. I feel like especially when you're getting into that like 4 or 5-year-old, they're ready for games like Candyland, Chutes and Ladders, board games, card games, building a tower, maybe back and forth with another kid where they're putting one block on and then another kid's putting another block on. Realizing that this too though may create some more issues when you're doing games like this, because then now you're working in losing and failure and a lot of hard challenges that my 5, almost 6-year-olds we play Candyland at least once a week just to practice losing and being okay with like not winning the game and having to go back, and if she doesn't get the fairy princess card and goes straight to the front, we're not going to end the game there. So sometimes it does take a lot of practice. We've been playing this game for years and we're still not there yet. So just realizing that there can be more challenges once you do set them up for those type of things.
And with teenagers that still feel that way.
Yeah, it makes sense. Some adults too. I mean, nobody likes to lose. That's a hard pill to swallow for sure. Sharing, it starts with sharing, and then losing, it just goes from there. Kids who are having trouble communicating, who might have a challenge, interacting, they feel safe with adults, but it's hard for them to interact with other kids. Children at this age are very interested in their world and their interests. They're not so interested in what other kids are feeling, thinking, saying, wanting at that time. So recognizing that too, that a lot of their talk is perseverative talk. It's about themselves and their interests. And things like that, and that's okay. But I think it's finding ways that you can turn that communication into, I know you love trains, but I just saw so-and-so playing with Thomas, and let's go over there and try to play with him, because it looks like he likes Thomas too. So it's kind of our role to start interjecting them into those other situations that maybe they wouldn't put themselves in when it comes to communication. Obviously the behavior with this one is that they're having difficulty expressing, if it's verbally, if it's non-verbally, if it's through sign, they're having trouble interacting with other kids on some level. I think starting obviously is beginning with whatever level of communication that is best for them and that where their level is, if it is with one-word utterances or if it's with a sound, if it's with a picture, if it's with a sign, using that and maybe educating some of the other kids around them about what your kids are using to communicate. In those areas to set them up for success and have other kids be able to understand if it's maybe not a full sentence, what your child's trying to get across to them. Maybe it's just giving a high five. That interaction alone is a great place to start between two kids. Practicing or waving hi to family or friends is another great way. Every time they see someone, even if you're prompting them, even if you're kind of helping them through those interactions, the more that they can practice those communication skills, the more likely they're going to do it with their peers in the future as well. Trying to allow enough processing time to communicate without interjecting. I feel like as parents, it's almost like our second nature to interject if our kids aren't getting things out right away. We're there to finish their sentence, to help them through it, to help find what they need, but it's not necessarily teaching them the skills that they need to do this on their own. Or to motivate them enough to communicate on their own. So as hard as it is, sometimes that can be something that can help in those situations too. Using an old phone or microphone can also be an interesting way to kind of teach communication skills even between other kids. Sometimes having something in our hand makes you feel a little more comfortable and a little more outgoing, and especially those microphones that like make magnifying noises and it makes you sound louder and an echo. I found that can be another tool that's successful in helping kids kind of get some verbal output if they're not doing that around their peers. Telephones, like I said, is another thing. They see us on them all the time. So they think that's normal. That's a way to communicate. That's something familiar to them. So sometimes even just giving two kids in a room a phone and seeing what happens, before you know it, they're both babbling. Maybe they start talking and exchanging things with each other, and it can kind of promote an interesting interaction between them going forward. Singing songs we talked about. having them fill in the blanks with each other. If you're singing, if you're happy and you know it, leaving out a word so that everybody's got to say it together. That's another form of kind of getting everybody to communicate together. Even though there might not be back and forth, they're at least doing something at the same time verbally. Building puzzles with a group, encouraging them to ask each other questions. If one kid has all the reds and the other kids has all the blues, asking them for, can I have that one, or just pointing to that one. Being able to just ask other kids for things at any level of communication that they're working with. And then if, like I said, if they do have perseverative interests, kind of using those as a tool to get them to interact with other kids. If you notice that maybe other kids in a play group are interested in those same things, kind of trying to point those things out. A lot of times kids might not be attentive to what's going on around them or what other kids are doing. So if you kind of even just point that out sometimes, it might encourage them a little bit more to go over and see what's going on with that child. Next one, just an example of communication boards. We use these a lot in our group programs as well. So if you have kiddos who may not be at that point where they're verbally communicating quite yet, sometimes being able to offer pictures to them of what it is that they want, what it is that they're looking for, what it is that they need can be helpful. So this is just an example of a communication board. A lot of kids will just point to what it is that they want. Some kids do a picture exchange. It's called PECs. Where they're taking the picture and giving it to another child to express what it is that they want or they need. Using first then boards, like I said, I have one back there just as an example. Most all of these have Velcro on them. The pictures stick on with Velcro, and you kind of take them off, put them back on, rearrange them as needed. There's a website on there that gave a lot of great examples of different communication boards if you're looking for something. And I feel like Google image search is always my best friend. If I'm looking for a picture of something, or I'm needing something, or an idea about something, that's a great place. Other than Pinterest, that's another great place we all use. But it's another great place to take a look for things. If you have kids who have difficulty expressing emotions, which I feel like are all 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds and beyond, some ideas about how to help them. The preschool mindset makes sense to them, but oftentimes it's confusing to us. So their behavior at times can make sense, but to us it's very different. The more elevated that we are in our response, the more elevated the response of our child is going to be. So if they're responding with laying on the floor and tantruming and crying, and our response is very big and over the top, it's not helping them to get back to a place where they need to be. Not easy to do in the moment at all, because like I said, you're in the community, you have dinner cooking, you have a million other things going on in your lives. Other than just trying to help in that moment, it can be very challenging to kind of figure out the best way to help. If you notice your kids starting to get frustrated, help them identify feelings. Help them say, I see that you're mad. I see that you're frustrated. I hear it. I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you through this. What can we do together? And try to figure out ways maybe to problem solve together. And it might not be that you're getting that reciprocal exchange of like, what do you need? And they're telling you what they need, because it's probably not going to happen like that. It may be a lot of trial and error of, can I just give you a hug? Can I start there? And then see where we can go after that. Maybe it's that we need to get out of the situation. Maybe it's we need to take a break from what's going on around us. Using a variety of colored scales to identify feelings. I'm going to skip to the next one because it has pictures of these. These are different. A lot of places use different color-coded scales to identify emotions and feelings. You can find a lot of these, like I said, online, on Pinterest, kind of anywhere. It helps kids to identify. They know colors. A lot of kids are very, familiar with different colors, and it can kind of take those to the next level by putting them with feelings. This one here is from the movie Inside Out, which is all about feelings and emotions. Great movie if you haven't seen it, or if your kids haven't seen it. It's a fabulous movie for adults, but I feel like, for kids, it really identifies what kids are going through, and it really makes sense. So that might be another place to start. I know we reference that a lot when it comes to feelings and emotions and things like that. Muppet Babies is another one that does a lot with feelings and emotions, teaching those skills. There's one about Animal Kong, and Animal's emotions become so big that he becomes King Kong, and everyone's scared of him, and he becomes huge, and it's very relatable for kids. So we've gone, and my son has a tendency to have big emotions a lot of times, and so when that happens, he kind of becomes AJ Kong, and we try to work through that, and it kind of makes him laugh, but it kind of takes away that feel for a minute, to where he can kind of regulate what's going on and process what's happening. So something like this might be helpful in those situations. Just kind of have with you, or just even to reference at home before you go into a social situation. Let's go back really quick. Tuning kids into other kids' positive and negative behaviors can be helpful. So using other kids as a teaching tool as well. Not to point out to shame another child or, point out in a negative way what's going on, but just saying, oh, I see that, Johnny's upset right now. What do you think could be going on? What do you think we could do to help him with that? It's not, like I said, to point out what someone else is doing wrong, but maybe to help them navigate what something looks like, how something feels, and maybe how they could help in that situation that may then in turn help themselves when they're going through situations like that as well. Providing those calming techniques when needed. This kind of goes back to a lot of that sensory information that we provided at the beginning. Trying a reset activity to distract them from what's going on. Sometimes playing Simon Says, hopscotch, red light, green light. Just taking it left completely to where it's not even what was going on at the time, but it kind of just helps reset their mind and their memory and get them out of that mode, because a lot of times I feel like when kids are full of emotions, it just spirals from there. And the spiral typically goes downward, and it makes it harder to kind of regain ground after they're in those moments. It also provides them the opportunity to problem solve too. So red light, green light, they're having to use their brain. It's not an automatic response. So they're having to use different neural connections to build that, which can then get them out of why I was so upset that so-and-so took my toy. And then you can talk to them when they are calm, because when they're in that heightened sense and state, it's very hard to get anything through positive and productive at that point in time. Different aggressive behavior is the next one. So I feel like this is kind of one that we all see a lot at this age as well. And again, these are all, I feel like, very typical things that all kids go through. They all have moments like this. They all have moments of struggle and frustration. It's their way of communicating. A lot of times they're obviously trying to tell you something, or trying to tell another child something. Maybe I don't like that. Don't take that from me. You're too close. I don't like the situation, or I want your attention and I don't know how to get it, so this is what I'm going to do to get your attention. More times than not, if a child is aggressive, everyone's going to come. Everybody's going to come running. Everyone's going to come to help. And positive or negative, sometimes that attention doesn't matter how they get it, as long as they're getting that interaction and that attention is what they're seeking at that moment. Staying consistent with them in those moments, if that does happen, letting them know that hitting's not okay. It's never okay to hit another child or bite another child. Not, again, shaming them in the moment. We don't want them to, start feeling terrible about themselves and get low self-esteem. Especially at this age. They're young, they're little, they're impressionable. But you want to teach them in those moments that you can't do that. Strategies that you can use, help them, again, identify those feelings when those outbursts happen. Helping them see, I see that you're angry. Helping you identify for them maybe those feelings, because they're not thinking to identify them in themselves. Trying to intervene if you notice that it's coming. If you notice that your child is getting elevated and you know what's coming next, you know that they're going to hit someone, trying to intervene before that even happens. A lot of times they call that the antecedent behavior in behavior therapy. So what happens before the actual behavior of hitting is usually the antecedent. A lot of times that's pretty consistent of, maybe they start tensing up and their body starts tensing and you can see them grinding their teeth and you can see it in their face that they're getting mad. Maybe going over and intervening at that point in time before it escalates to the next step. That can be helpful. Or understanding, connecting with them and saying, this is hard. I see that somebody took your toy and I know that you really wanted that and you brought that to play with. Or I see that you wanted to play with Susie and Johnny's playing with her instead. And that can be a hard situation for you as well. So kind of trying to find connection with them in those moments to help them through. Practicing those social frustration situations at home as well. Not taking it to the nth degree, but you can practice with dolls. You can practice with cars crashing into each other. You can practice with, oh no, he fell down. He's hurt. We should go over and help him. We should bring him a Band-Aid. We should do this. Kind of walking them through those situations through play before they even get out into the community and are practicing those skills with other kids. Working on, we kind of talked about that, ways to repair the relationship if it does happen that a child is hitting another child or biting them or something does occur. Talking out with your child when they are calm, ways that they can repair that friendship. Bringing them a Band-Aid, saying I'm sorry, making them a card. Starting to teach empathy in those moments are a great tool because it takes them out of their feelings and puts them in another child's feelings, which again at this age is not something that most of our kids have and are practicing on a regular basis. And again, the social stories, I feel like I go to that a lot, but I feel like that's so helpful because it's visual. It's something that they can tangibly see. They can maybe feel it. They can relate to it. Sometimes you may even have pictures of them. I have pictures of my kids, I'm sure, that are in an angry moment that we can reference at any point in time. Sometimes that helps to see how I look when I'm feeling that way and what I can do to make things better. Kind of going back to that antecedent behavior part of things, one thing I see a lot is it is for attention. Kind of figuring out why is this behavior happening? Is it happening when they're around other kids? Is it happening when maybe if you have another child that you're helping the other child and now they come over and hit you or hit the other child? If you notice that it's happening in very consistent ways and it's happening in consistent moments, finding ways that you can help them work through those things. Maybe, like I said, it's bringing them in and helping with the other child. Maybe it's giving them a role in something. Like I said, the vitamin issue we were having, it kind of resolved itself by giving them a role and a responsibility and the feeling of sense of like, I can do something, I can be helpful in this without creating chaos in the morning, which is what I was kind of doing before then. So trying to find ways that you can kind of break down the behavior, figure out why it's happening, when it's happening, figuring out too like what your consequence is, how do you usually react in those situations. Sometimes that could be playing into it as well, that maybe the reaction that they're getting out of you is what they're looking for. And so it's kind of reinforcing that behavior to happen again. Or maybe if it's at school, like I said, maybe the reaction of individuals at school or the teachers at school or the other kids is kind of reinforcing that behavior to increase the likelihood of it occurring again. These are just a couple visual supports as well. It kind of gives you the anger rules and what to expect, what not to expect. Taking deep breaths. This one you can't really see that well, but it has X's with numbers. And so sometimes just even moving something for kids is helpful, like rote counting, counting pennies, counting something. Doing something different can help them kind of refocus and reorganize as well. So the question was, in the moment, if someone is hitting, especially a child hitting a mom or a child hitting a sibling, how do you stop it in the moment without shaming them or without, putting them down for that behavior? I think sometimes, not necessarily a timeout, but just maybe taking them out of the situation for a minute and maybe giving yourself a minute to breathe too. I know, both my kids have gone through that, sometimes still go through that. My son loves running his head into me is kind of his biggest thing to do. So, sometimes just giving us a break sometimes can help before I even respond. I will say just as a parent, not necessarily as in the moment as a therapist, is what I've done at home. Because sometimes you're like shocked by that behavior when it happens. You're kind of like, wait a minute, what did I do? Why did this happen? Why are you hitting me? And, that's kind of your initial response to things. And sometimes that's maybe giving them a little bit more attention in the moment than is necessary and can maybe kind of be continuing that behavior because maybe they did it to get your attention. So I would maybe kind of take a break, take a step away, and maybe try to figure out what was going on at that time when, were you giving attention to the 5-year-old? Were you making dinner and not paying attention to anybody? Were you, I feel like my son, that's kind of the biggest times that I see it is if I'm doing something else other than interacting with him is when I see that behavior in him increase a lot more. And so I've tried making like special time with us and making a very big deal about it, making it, hey, this is our time to sit. I don't have my phone around. I don't have anything else around me. The TV's not on. We don't have his sisters in school, so he's home a lot with me, just the two of us. So I try to make a big deal about the time that we do spend together so that it doesn't feel to him like most of our day is mommy on the phone, mommy doing this. I run 2 businesses, so there's a lot going on all day, every day that could take me away from a lot of moments with him. So maybe try to figure out if you find that is what's going on, figuring out what's going on ahead of time, in the moment, and then maybe taking a break for a minute to figure that out. We have steps at our house, so a lot of times like, let's go sit on the steps. And I go with him, we go there and talk. Sometimes if it's too escalated, he goes there and I go somewhere else, and then I come back when he's calm and not screaming anymore. And then we can sit and talk about why were you so mad? What was bothering you in that moment? And then we can kind of try to problem solve and figure it out simplistically together.